I wasted so much of my life waiting on people to love me the way that I deserve to be loved, only to realize that they did not have the capacity to love. And it wasn't until I accepted that, truly accepted it, that I was set free. Because as long as I was waiting on them, I was waiting on these people to finally love me, to finally see me for who I was, to finally appreciate me for what I was. Once I realized that they couldn't do that, they didn't have it in them. Not because it was something against me. It wasn't a personal attack, right? Even though these were some of the closest people to me, right? My own parental figures. These were some of the closest people in my life, if not the closest relationship that I had within my life. When I finally accepted that they could not love because they did not have that love for themselves, finally I was free. And that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. That doesn't mean I didn't have to shed tears. I didn't have to go through this process of grieving that loss. But through the process, through that journey, I guess I would say, I realized that me accepting that they had the inability to love because they did not have that love for themselves, me accepting that was also me accepting that I needed to cultivate the very love that I was seeking from others within myself. Because I also realized that I did not even have the capacity to receive love. You see, when you learn how to love from those who only have a conditioned love for themselves, and when I say conditional love, I mean it's straightforward. It's like there are conditions to how they're going to show their affection. There's conditions to how they, display their means of intimacy. So you might be raised in a household where every time you put on a certain behavior, you are rewarded for it with affection, right? I'm only going to hug you when you do a certain thing, or I'm only going to show you attention, even in the slightest, like eye contact or whatever it may be. I'm only going to give you attention when you show up a certain way. And when you don't show up that way, then I'm going to deprive you of that. When you grow up in a household like that and you start to become conditioned in that way, you start to expect affection, attention, desire, whatever it may be. You start to accept those things and expect those things through your conditioned behavior. And so you are literally conditioned into behaving a certain way in order to get your or perceived emotional needs met. So you find yourself as an adult doing the very same thing. You show up in relationship dynamics and you act in a certain way because you believe you will not receive love in any other way. So you act inauthentically. You act outside of your true nature and your true character because you want this other person to accept you. And you believe the only way they will accept you is if you show up in a very distinct sort of way, right? If I show up and I continuously do things for you, which was one thing in my own household, right? If I do physical things for you, so I'm in the kitchen cleaning up or cooking. I'm in the house fixing things and doing things. I'm taking care of your logistics in your life, right? The car insurance, the car bill, the this, the that. I'm helping you through problem solving. That's the only way that I can receive your affection. That's the only way I can see your attention. When I'm living a life from that paradigm, it becomes impossible for me to receive love in a real way, to receive love in a free form, right? In an unconditioned way, because I'm always expecting a response from the conditionality. And so we have to actually train ourselves. We have to build this aspect or cultivate this aspect of ourselves where we can receive love unconditionally. And that's a process in and of itself. And the only way we get to that place is accepting that it's never going to be somebody else loving us enough that's going to lead to us feeling loved. It's not going to be somebody appreciating us enough in order for us to feel appreciated. Like, I remember when I finally had this realization in the context of an intimate relationship, right? Is no matter what my partner did, no matter how they showed up, I would still not feel loved enough because I was not accepting of love in the first place. I could not be loved. So I could have the most loving, gracious, unconditional loving individual in my life, and I still would not accept their love because I did not know how to receive that, right? I had not cultivated the ability to receive anything but, a trade-off. It's almost like a business contract, only nonverbal and non-written. And so accepting that, you know what, my folks have had their own life. They've had their own set of experiences, their own childhood where they were demonstrated certain characteristics, or where they were trained into certain ways of being that was so dependent on condition that they knew nothing else. And so they passed that on to me. And so they actually do not have the ability to love. Now, of course, being attached or caring or concerned is one thing, right? As a parent, those are natural. But love is not necessarily guaranteed. Because again, love has to be something that is first cultivated from within ourselves. There has to be a reciprocity from within first. That's why there is this cliche of, you can only love another once you love yourself. The cliche exists because it's the ultimate truth. I have to know what love feels like for me. I have to know what appreciation feels like from me. I have to know what acceptance feels like from me in order for me to be able to receive it from another individual and to do so in a healthy and productive way. And so, one of the hardest truths in life, which is also the most liberating once it's accepted, is that most relationship dynamics that we've had thus far, or we may even be in right now, the individual that we're interfacing with simply does not have the ability to give you what you desire most, which is love. However, even if they did, you still would not be able to receive it until you started to cultivate it within yourself. And, I know we live in this world of buzzwords, and people just talk about self-love, self-worth, this and that, without actually giving any meaning or substance to it. So I'm going to make sure that I'm not just going to leave y'all hanging on these terms that I'm using. When I say love, I mean the highest regard or the highest wish or the highest desire for oneself or another. So self-love is I wish myself the absolute highest regard and absolute best. Love to another is I wish you the very same thing. So if I wish the very best upon myself, I'm not going to mistreat myself, which means I'm not going to talk down to myself, right? That's one of the most straightforward ones. Most of us have been conditioned to beat ourselves up continuously, right? Or to only reward ourselves in whatever means once we have done enough, or once we are quote unquote good enough, once we have proved our worthiness, right? And so we will hold ourselves from joy. We will hold ourselves from fulfillment. And we will instead punish ourselves until we believe that we have finally earned affection, finally earned attention, finally earned appreciation. And we treat ourselves this way. It begins with us, right? We won't display these things to ourselves. I remember feeling that I was being isolated in a relationship because there was no appreciation there. And then one day in a journaling session, I realized that I had never woken up and simply show myself appreciation for my own life. I was waiting on this person who was next to me to wake up and look at me and, think the world of me. And wow, I'm just so thankful for your presence, when I couldn't even display that to myself. And the deepest irony in life is when I actually start to show myself that, when you start to show yourself that very same level of appreciation that you desire, it's reciprocated in your external world. Now, it might not be through the person that you want it to be from currently, right? But it's going to come in a multitude of forms. Once you start to show yourself appreciation, then life starts to mirror that right back to you, right? That's the deepest irony. That's the big secret. That's the quote unquote law of attraction, if we want to get down into them nitty gritties. But, it was such a realization for me, an important realization for me, because up until that point, I was waiting and I was waiting and I was waiting, and I was becoming deeply resentful. I was becoming bitter. I was becoming anxious. Well, actually, the anxiety was already there, right? But it was triggering that anxiety. And I thought it was the other person doing this to me. That if they just showed up in a different way, then I would feel different. If they just did something different, then our entire situation would be different. When in truth, it was always up to me. In truth, I was the only one who could create that transition from unloved, unseen, unheard, unappreciated to loved, to being seen, to being appreciated. When I started to literally invest in myself, Instead of waking up in the morning and looking for this person's validation, I was now looking for my own. And I was sitting with myself in meditation and reflection and, taking my journaling seriously, not about others, but it was for me. Now it was a practice in my own cultivation of relationship. The relationship I had to myself, which is oftentimes the most neglected relationship in our lives, is the one that we have with ourselves. And I'm actually going to create an entire new video, because I've done one in the past about cultivating a relationship with you. But I do want to give just a fresh perspective on what it looks like to truly develop that inner relationship. Because without that one, there is no relationship we can have with another. Everything literally starts from within. So that's the message for today is, allowing ourselves to come to a place where we can accept that some people simply cannot love us the way that we want to be loved. But that's not a curse upon our lives. That's not the issue. It's our solution. It's freedom. And as soon as we can accept that, we're set free to finally start to develop that love within ourselves. I appreciate you guys for watching. I love you only because I love me. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.